couple weeks ago, I was sitting on the couch watching my friend play Breath of the Wild, and I couldn't stop yelling at him about how good the stamina wheel is. And can you blame me? This beautiful little circle is my favorite piece of UI in any game ever. And as a UX engineer, it's literally my job to geek out on this stuff, which is honestly why you'd think my friends would stop inviting me over to play games. The Breath of the Wild stamina meter is a master class in information design. Game designers, app designers, take note. It's a prime example of how simple and tight a UI element can be. Literally everything it is and does communicate something meaningful to the player. How, literally? Well, you're about to find out, aren't you? Okay, background. The stamina wheel was introduced in Skyward Sword and carried over into Breath of the Wild, where it was perfected. It functions similarly in both games. When Link runs, swims, climbs, or performs strenuous activities like spin attacks or taming a horse, his stamina meter depletes. If it empties all the way, Link gets tired and maybe drowns. Stamina is a great mechanic. It's an intuitive expression of Link's capabilities and seamlessly unifies the physicality of exploration with the physicality of combat. Most of Link's basic actions consume no stamina. Walking, jumping, swinging a sword. And the more intense the action, ranging from sprinting up a hill to hanging from a paraglider to vaulting straight up a cliffside like Chris fucking Sharma, the more stamina is required. The stamina meter is a conditional UI element. It doesn't appear when it's not needed, unlike your heart containers, which always sit in the top left of the screen whether or not you're in combat. Conditional UI elements are the real MVP of RPGs, cutting down the number of on-screen elements until you really need to see them. All UI should operate under the principle of out of mind, out of sight. So if you're going about your chilled out business, enjoying your day, not using any stamina, then the game doesn't bother showing you the stamina meter. Like, duh, right? Except no, not at all. Most games don't do this. Most Zelda games don't even do this. Do you remember how previous Zelda games used to show you your rupees all the time? You could be in the final battle with Ganon and what do you know? You've got 900 rupees. Maybe you can bribe him out of Hyrule. Current Zelda games don't do this anymore. When you're running around Hyrule, it no longer keeps your wallet on screen like Medley's about to pickpocket you at any moment. The player knowing their wealth at all times isn't likely to affect their moment-to-moment decision-making. It just needs to be readily accessible when the player asks, I wonder if I'm poor right now. Or when the player is actively buying something. Same deal with stamina. Whenever the stamina meter is visible, it is changing. Whenever you can see it, it is currently worth your consideration. And this conditionality serves an additional important purpose. The act of the meter popping in instantly communicates what the user needs to know. The action they are currently performing is on a time limit. And because the meter isn't up here or down here, it's here, it's very hard for the player to miss it when it pops in. It sits right next to Link, the source of the action being performed, and thus where the player is already likely to be looking. It feels less like a piece of UI and more like an extension of the action you're currently taking. An aspect of good UI is how far a user's eyes have to travel to utilize the interface. Pinning this to Link makes that distance minimal. You can keep your eyes on what's important while having a good sense of how your stamina level will affect what you can do next. Most games are pretty decided on how they want to represent stamina. Skyrim, horizontal bar, bottom right. Tunic, vertical bar, bottom left. Dark Souls, horizontal bar, top left. Green, green, green. Look at how unobtrusive these are. They're very clearly UI cordoned off from world space by being pinned to what is very obviously reserved for the HUD. Game UI, game UI. Breath of the Wild took a calculated risk by taking that stamina bar and putting it right next to your friggin' head. They determined that stamina is so important that it's worth it to smack it right in the middle of the screen, but to keep it compressed, to minimize that obstruction intersecting as few world elements as possible. They took what is normally a bar and they made it a circle. This is the most exciting thing that has ever happened to me. Regardless of Link's current stamina, the meter level sits at a consistent point in space. If it's full, your eyes go here. If it's empty, your eyes go here. It's a 100% difference in the value of the stat and everywhere in between, and it's all in the same spot. Look at a mock-up of this if stamina had been instead represented with a traditional bar. You see how the user's eye line has to change to track their stamina depletion? You can't expect me to watch where I'm shooting if my stamina is currently draining and my target is over there and my stamina's up there. It just wouldn't work. Sable decided to go with a vertical bar and still have it pinned next to the player character, but I don't like it as much. I'm sorry. It's a pretty game, I just don't like rectangles, even when they are actually diamonds. Sable proves that you can have a vertical meter and just make it itty-bitty to keep it from getting in the way of stuff. And yeah, it works. It's fine. Okay, look. Put these two right next to each other. Now, look at what happens when you unspool the circle. See how much more length you're working with when you're trying to communicate stamina drainage, even though the meters take up a similar amount of screen space? Here's another way to look at it. Watch him go. I hope you're not tabbed over because I put a lot of work into these animations. Depletion is detectable in Sable, but the rate is near imperceptible. And the color choices don't help. Speaking of length, we weren't, but I'm bringing it back to length. Another point in favor of circles is that this meter, it gets big. The player can upgrade Link's stamina 10 times, so the bar grows to 3 times its normal length, but you barely even notice. The info still sits in the exact same spot, even at upgrade 10. No additional eye travel, no more visual obstruction. It's hard for a rectangle to handle this so gracefully. Look at how long this rectangle would have to be to get the same amount of length. I tried a lot of things, it's just not as good. Which is why Sable did a Breath of the Wild and went, nope, no rectangles here. Don't get me wrong, having a big dang long rectangle is sometimes an awesome idea. Bam, big long rectangle. Bam, 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 bam. Because you want that piece of UI to communicate something different. You want it to be imposing. The more of the screen it takes up, the scarier, the bigger, the badder it feels. Which is good for a boss health bar, which you look at sometimes. Not so good for something you need to watch. That's why this is okay for Link's heart containers. Your hearts don't fluctuate as wildly or as continuously as your stamina does. You don't need to keep literal constant tabs on them. You get hit, you glance at your hearts to see how bad the hit was, and then you keep going. But the rules are still the same as before. Don't get hit. That doesn't change. You don't need to see your hearts over your head at all times to understand that. You're not going to be running around Hyrule and, ooh, my hearts are gone, how did that happen? I didn't notice. Because when the designers need to communicate time-sensitive or critical information about Link's health, guess what? They pull the same trick. They put the information on Link, where the player is already focusing. When you're critically low on health, Link flashes red. When you take damage, Link gets knocked over. When you're on fire, Link is on fire. So, what time-sensitive information needs to be communicated about stamina, and how do they do it? Let's talk stamina drainage. Ugh, terrible word, 0 out of 10 words. Stamina depletion. Let's talk stamina depletion. This is what the player needs to keep near constant tabs on, lest they fall from the sky or fall off a cliff. Human brains are good at getting quick information from percentages. This is why pie charts and actual pies are so easy to parse at a glance. In Skyward Sword, the meter solely indicates your current stamina level, animating linearly as it drains. Actually, I lied. You can see the slightly translucent delta, but it's so subtle that I didn't notice it until editing just now. Breath of the Wild takes subtlety and explodes it with a laser. Bam! Colors. This little flashy bit is such a no-brainer to me in hindsight, but again, I must stress how much this previously did not exist. And why would it? It's conceptually very annoying. UI designers want fast information delivery and they want visual cohesion, and it's hard to get both at the same time, and prioritizing the former over the latter is very, very scary. There's an obvious one-to-one trade-off between being loud and noticeable and fading into the background to the point where I forget a piece of UI even exists. I'm looking at you, button map HUD. Well, blend in this meter does not. This red is used in very few other places in Breath of the Wild's color palette. It's not a very red game. Not to mention that green and red are complementary colors, meaning that one makes the other stand out even more. This whole meter says, "Ah, look at me!" More exhausting actions will cause the stamina consumption delta to become larger, more eye-catching, more insistent. Stamina consumption delta, how's that for some jargon? Climbing? Stamina wiggles out little by little. Shooting an arrow while dangling from a paraglider? Yowza! You're on the clock, Link, make it quick. It's these small details that combine to make truly feeling UI. Look at the emotional story being told by these two states. See the way they want you to feel in these moments. You feel the precarity of that last bit of stamina wiggling down to 0 as Link nears the summit, as the green ekes slowly away, leaving behind a little bit of red. Initially, this actually tricked my eye. I thought the meter was wiggling as it drained, like the animation was choppy. It looks like it staggers as it moves, but it doesn't. The meter moves smoothly, animating between orange and red. That jagged, flickering look comes from the color choice. Look at what happens when you grayscale the screen. Ah, you can see it now, right? Color selection isn't just about Roy G. Biv, it's also about contrast. Look at how the depletion delta modulates, not just from orange to red, it modulates between dark and light. That's what makes it especially eye-catching and what gives it that flickery effect, like a candle sitting right next to your face. The color story of the stamina wheel is what makes it so easy to keep track of while so much else is happening around you. That's the power of good UI, baby! Notice how you feel Link's exhaustion as the wheel pulses orange to red as the stamina wheel refills. Watch as it hangs for a moment at full green before disappearing. The flash to white as the meter refills all the way. Notice how the refill modulation is slower, more lethargic. It doesn't hit that same intense high. The contrast modulation is less insistent. Notice how they didn't have the wheel simply refill back to front with green, because that would have sent the wrong message to the player. You can't use your stamina until the wheel has fully recharged, and green would mean go. Watch how the meter carves out a slice of pink as Link jumps, taking out a big chunk of stamina in one go. It doesn't just drain instantly, it hangs for a second, white hot, to make you really feel the effort of that jump. The wheel always says what it means, and it gives you enough time to digest that information. And it does it all with style. But honey, those are just the micro-level functions of the wheel. There's so much more to talk about. The most emotionally evocative element of the stamina wheel comes down to what it tells you about you, about your personal journey through the game. It's rare that a UI element, especially a simple shape, can make you really feel a sense of progression. Sure, there are entire genres of game built around the core aesthetic of big number go up. But ingraining that feeling of progress on more than a mathematical level is hard to achieve with UI alone. Not so with the stamina wheel. The player can upgrade Link's stamina wheel by spending spirit orbs gained by completing shrines. 4 orbs buys you a new segment that gets added to your wheel, up to a maximum of 3 concentric circles. The wheel supports 10 upgrades, 20% of a wheel each time. Notice that the outer circles are thinner than the interior sections to minimize visual obstruction, which is fine. They don't need to be thicker, because until the player has run their stamina down to the final wheel, they're not in critical condition. They've got time, they can see what they need to see. We don't need to eat up all that extra area. Technically, the outermost circles do drain at a marginally faster rate as a function of, math. But that's more of an interesting observation than it is realistically noticeable to the player. What is noticeable to the player is feeling the wheel take longer and longer to deplete. What a simple and evocative way to communicate Link getting stronger and having more energy to expend. It's a very obvious visual parallel to getting tougher. It's the simple shape equivalent of larger muscle mass or greater lung capacity. It just makes sense when you see it. Despite being a fairly abstract representation, it gels with our understanding of how the world works. It's rad that a couple of green line segments can make you feel a genuine sense of improvement. The designers could have gone another route here to minimize visual obstruction. They could have made the wheel deplete more slowly based on Link's max stamina. More stamina, slower depletion rate. But I think we can all picture how much less effective that would have been. The player gets a feel over time for how actions drain their stamina, jumping, gliding, climbing, spin attacking, the stuff they've done over and over and over throughout play. It would have been fascinating to see players progressing through the game, gradually learning to intuit the rate of stamina depletion only to have it change on them in service of a poorly planned UI element, but that didn't happen. But it could have. So many of the choices designers make are invisible to players in the end product. Oftentimes, the best UI decisions feel obvious in hindsight. Of course this is a wheel, of course they show the rate at which your stamina is depleting, of course this is exactly where it is and what it does exactly what it do and it look the way it do also. But no, this isn't how most games do stamina. Even Wind Waker had a horizontal green magic bar beneath the hearts container that you had to keep your eye on while paragliding. And while a little more similar, you can see how much the stamina indicator has changed since Skyward Sword. They removed the gilded edge, they made it smaller, removed the pie wedges, they streamlined it. And I swear to God, whoever came up with the idea to have this depletion delta should be instantly promoted. Design is an iterative process across the industry, and not all of the elements that matter can be as glamorous as chat systems or maps, plug. But even something as innocuous as this little circle can be packed with an unexpected amount of meaning, and I think the Breath of the Wild team did a fantastic job. They took huge chances letting their UI get all up in the business of their beautiful open world. You risk a huge trade-off in immersion or annoyance or visual overload, but part of the fun of UI design is managing those trade-offs. As we saw, visual obstruction can be part of the point. It's fun to see the hearts bar grow. It's fun to see the stamina wheel grow. Look big, feel strong. This all just goes to show what a great job the designers did. The usefulness outweighs the obtrusiveness. It feels correct. Every game has different needs, of course. And all of these other stamina meters I'm showing are perfectly serviceable. They take information the player needs to know and show it to them. The Breath of the Wild team figured out how to do that in a way that is so much more. It's visually compact, it's close to the action, it represents player progression, it makes you feel Link's strikes and jumps, it shows not only the value it represents, but also the rate of change so smoothly that you don't even think about what it's doing. It works in harmonious conjunction with itself, movement, color, contrast, and conditionality all operating in perfect cohesion in order to properly convey the dynamism of a wonderfully dynamic movement system. The stamina wheel made me grit my teeth. It made my roommate shout, "Come on, come on, come on!" It made me hold the controller tight, lean forward in my chair, breathe a sigh of relief. I'm getting married to this green circle next weekend. All of you are invited. I think that's all I have to say. I like this circle. I like it a whole lot. Hey, thank you for watching. I've been going through a bit of a tough time this year. Moving to a new state, starting a new job, so my video schedule has been not. Special thanks to my patrons, especially to my top tier patrons, Steve, Shelly, Robin, and Sammy. Y'all are the best. If you want to help me out, giving this video a like and a comment and sharing it on your favorite social media site, well, it's honestly game-changing. And if you liked this video, I've got another analyzing Breath of the Wild stellar map design. Might want to give that one a look. If you want to go the extra mile, check out my Patreon. Every little bit helps me bring you more strange worship of simple shapes, and more. As for and more, I'll see you next time. Thanks a bunch for watching.